And we need to make a motion to approve the change of order in the way that we are discussing the BOE report and flipping it with, I don't know what it is on the agenda.
Yeah, it's being moved to right below contentious action.
There we go.
Not contentious, continuous action items.
Thank you. Yes.
And the governance bylaw update is being pulled from the agenda for the evening.
Is there a second?
This is Rosabelle. I second. Oh,
I'm sorry. Who was that? Jill, thank
Rosabelle.
you. Oh, Jill or Rosabelle?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Pick one.
Jill. Gotcha. All ayes?
Aye.
Any nays? All right, motion carried. We're flipping things around. Thank you.
Oh,
that's me anyway.
Yeah.
So Heather Plotsky.
Here.
Present. Heather Marshall.
Here.
Me. Rosabelle.
Here.
David.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Alex. Jill.
Hi, I'm here.
Yep.
Oh, was that David? Our David, or was that a different David?
David Choi.
I don't think so.
Okay, different David. All right. Kia. All right. Heather Osborne.
Here.
Thank you. We have so many Heathers. Sorry. Allison.
Here.
Thank you. Devin.
Here.
Thank you. Chris.
Here.
Thank you. Nadine, yes?
Yep.
Rebecca? Kate Whelan let us know she wasn't coming. Nita's coming late. And we are good to go.
Okay, and we have quorum, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Heather Marshall, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold, so I'm kind of coughing on and off right now. So welcome everyone. I'm Heather Marshall, co-chair of Community Advisory Committee for the Poway Unified School District. Right now, I'd like to take a moment to ask for any public input. This is an opportunity for members of the public to share comments and concerns with the CAC. And in the interest of time, speakers are limited to 3 minutes each with a total of 15 minutes allotted for all public input. Please respect student and personnel privacy. CAC members and district staff cannot respond to individual concerns in this forum, but will take your contact information for future follow-up. The Community Advisory Committee in this section takes no action. Is there any public input at this time?
Please feel free to put yourself in the chat or unmute yourself.
Mm-hmm. I'll give it about a
Hi.
minute. And,
Hi. I'm a staff member from Abraxas, and I'm also a parent in the district. So I do try to come to these. This is probably the first one I've been able to attend this year because of all the just COVID and everything. And I'm just really glad we have this community forum for our special education families and students. And anyway, just happy to be here.
Welcome. And we're glad to have you.
Thank you for being here. Anyone else have any public input or like the floor at this time? Any questions? And like Tristy said, feel free to put it in the chat if you don't want to unmute. Going once, going twice. Okay, moving on to approval of the minutes for April. So if I could get well, first, did everyone get a chance? All CAC members get a chance to look over the minutes for April? I hope so.
Yes.
Okay, so can I get a motion to approve the minutes for April?
Hi, it's Alex. I motion to approve the minutes for April.
Thank you, Alex. Can I get a second? Sorry.
I second. It's Jill.
Thank you, Jill. You're on top of it today. Okay, can I get all in favor, say aye?
Aye.
Right.
All right, thank you. That calls to approve the minutes for April, as long as there are no nays. No nays? Okay, good. Motion carried. On to the next, I believe we have to, do we still have to approve to be resuming Zoom for next month, correct?
We do, and I did get a contact from legal today that we can continue this into, at this point, into the fall if we so want to, until we are told otherwise by the legal team.
Okay,
So
so we will have to, if we can get someone to call a motion to approve to be in Zoom for our June meeting next month. Can I get someone to motion?
I motion to have the meeting be held via Zoom next month in June.
Heather
Thank you,
Osborne will
Alex.
second.
Can I get?
Heather
Thank you,
O.
Heather. Yes. Okay, can everybody motion say aye?
Aye.
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 Any nays? Sorry, that was the last aye. Any nays?
No.
No? Okay, motion carried to resume in Zoom for our next meeting in June. All right, are we moving on to the district liaison report? Because I know something.
No,
changed around.
we switched it around, so it's going to be the Board of Ed liaison. And before I do that,
Okay.
when we have motions, everybody, we do need, because we are multiple screens, which we're thrilled about to have so many guests, both distinguished and in public who are distinguished as well. We definitely need members when voting because we are triple screen tonight. We need verbal votes, please, everybody. Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
I'd like to welcome Dr. Cindy Seisma, who's filling in for the Board of Education, for the Board of Education liaison report tonight. And we really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you, Heather. It's good to see all of you. I see, I'm scrolling through to see who's got cameras on because I'm trying to put names to faces with as many people as I can. I know a couple of you. So if I know you, hi. If I don't know you, hopefully at some point I get to meet you in person. I have been to a number of these meetings this year, as I like to call them. For those of you who don't know, I've been a special ed teacher for a long year, obviously not currently. I'm on the board, but I spend a significant amount of my time still at Garden Road volunteering in the ASD classrooms, especially with the shortages they've experienced. It's always been a place that I feel very welcomed, and I love working with the kids. And I see the stress that everybody is under with in particular, the IA shortages that, we're trying to get good people in there to work with all of your kids, and it's tough sometimes. So I understand in a small way, how some of that frustration that you might feel, how it resonates in the classroom, and definitely from a teacher's perspective, that it's there's not enough hands-on, and then these kiddos need in order for them to make their little successes, they need the hands-on. So but I love going in there and supporting, and I'm around as much as I can at the schools, supporting and talking to the kids. But in light of that, it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and I know that everyone, it's been a rough couple of years, and it's while it's getting better, I know that there's still a lot of stressors out there. You see so much as a runny nose, and school might send your kids home, or goodness gracious, we have been hit hard with allergies in this household, and some of these allergies mirror a lot of the symptoms that you would see with COVID. And it's like we have to get all the tests to show, look, truly, it's just allergies. But then, when the kids are now at home and they're missing out, and you're having to shift your day, we're still not there yet. Although, things are open and things are getting better. But I know that it's stressful, and take a moment when you can. I mean, we're almost into summer, and I know sometimes that can add other stressors when you're like kids are not on a schedule. But sometimes it's nice to not be on a schedule, depending on your personal family life. But I've had to pause to remind myself sometimes to take care of myself, and you all need to do that as well. And we are thinking about you, so take those moments, take care of yourself, take care of your kids. I was doing everything I could tonight because my son has ADHD and has severe impulsivity, and it was like, okay, I'm going to keep my voice very calm while he was spazzing out at the table. And clearly the meds were wore off, and we needed to now work on a school project. And I'm just like, okay, can you hear us? Do you hear? This is where you're up here and we're down here. Let's try to meet in a little bit. But I understand just a little bit, and it's hard, and I'm like, I just want to shake him sometimes. But take that moment and for yourself. And it's okay sometimes to tell the kids, like, go outside, go read a book. Mom needs a timeout. But that being said, I know that there's been a lot going on over the last couple of years, but we have finally really been able to do a lot of celebrations lately. And it has been busy with the invites around the district over the last month. And tomorrow is the CAC Awards. And I know putting on an event can be stressful in itself too. So I'm sure it's going to be well celebrated and amazing. And so kudos to all of you who have gone to the extra mile, and to make these well-deserving individuals feel celebrated. It was brought to my attention that there were about 300 nominations that were submitted, so that was quite the task of going through and selecting the recipients. I know it's tough. It's like, oh my gosh, there's so many amazing people that are in and around this district, and you want to recognize all of them for their efforts. And so thank you to all of you for what you've been doing. And I know that there is an inclusivity 4 schools that are being recognized for their practices in inclusivity on Friday that I'm hoping to jump on and visit those schools as well. I believe I heard it was Mount Carmel, Pomerado Valley, and Bernardo Heights, maybe. So that'll be super exciting. I did touch base with Michelle, and I had some questions with both Michelle and Darsh were back in DC, and I asked her if there was anything that she wanted to share from her visit that related to special education. And she said that she and Darsh were lobbying for or they were able to speak with Mike Levin and Scott Peters, who had been lobbying for full funding of IDEA, which full funding, I guess, is about 40% of, and Mike Levin and Scott Peters have signed off on it. And at the moment, Daryl Issa has not, and they had a very pleasant conversation with his staffer. And she said while she was very, very pleasant to speak to, she didn't see it happening. So if you know of anyone that you can reach out to help support getting that in place, that would be great. That was the message she had me pass off to you. Because right now, last year, I guess about 7.8% of special ed was funded. So 40% would be amazing. She's hoping for 15-20%, which is twice what we're currently receiving. And they also were continuing to lobby for the COVID funding that covered the mental health. So all the extra therapists and counselors that have been covered over the last year. And while the senators were very interested in this, they weren't able to like put a bill in front of them that said this is going to continue to support this. So they're continuing to work on seeing if we can get coverage, or obviously across the board, getting coverage for mental health specialists. And those were kind of like the big ones that came out of the last month. Are there any questions?
I don't think so. Thank you so much. At least not from me. That was
I
fabulous.
I have a quick question. You said Mount Carmel, Bernardo Heights, Valley, and what was the fourth school? I'm sorry.
Pomerado?
Thank you. And is there an Assembly Bill number that they should reach out to?
She for the getting the mental health funding.
Yes.
No, they didn't. No,
Okay.
That's where Michelle said that they've been doing some research around, like, is there a bill right now? And they hadn't been able to find one, but they were very interested in continuing to support that if they could find one that
Got
they
it.
could sign off on. Yeah.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Anyone else?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no more questions for Dr. Seisma, we're going to move on to the, again, thank you so much. And I know it was last minute, so we really do appreciate it. Thank you. We'll move on to the district liaison report, and Jeanette Anderson, I know, has a presentation for us on the LCAP update and the local plan differences and the budget and the differences.
Okay, great. Let me see if I can share my screen. Can you allow me to screen share, please, Rosabelle?
Is it working?
It is now.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Okay. So I wanted to start off by thanking Rosabelle and Heather for a really productive conversation that we were able to have earlier today. I think that we really kind of got down to the bottom of a little bit of confusion, and I think that we're going to be able to really resolve that moving forward. We also had opportunity to look at and review our bylaws that are associated with the information that I'm about to present to you tonight. And so it was a really good conversation. And I'm going to start off by kind of explaining that if we had had that conversation earlier, my presentation this evening might look a little bit different, because what we've really come down to is that the community in general it's believed doesn't recognize the difference between what we call the special education local plan and the local control and accountability plan. And so I really appreciate their insight. They're being able to communicate to me what the community's concerns or questions are. And so I'm going to spend a little bit of time trying to really separate the local control and accountability plan from the special education local plan. So just to start off, both are plans that are 3 years. So you develop them every 3 years. But both plans also require the district to provide annual updates. And so that's a little bit of confusion that we're going to work together to straighten out in our bylaws. Our bylaws, I don't think, are inaccurate, but we probably would benefit from just explaining things out a little bit. So this evening, I'm going to talk to you about the local control and accountability plan. What's important to know about the local control and accountability plan is that it is a plan that is intended to serve all students of the district, but the focus is really on supporting English language learners, foster youth, and students from lower income homes, what we call our unduplicated student count. Unduplicated just basically means that they cannot be counted in the same criteria more than once. So to explain that out a little bit better, a student who is an English language learner might also come from a low income home and might even be foster, but we only count that student once. And the reason we count that student once is because that's how we have the funding provided to the district. So the local control accountability plan really goes back to what we call the LCFF, and that stands for local control funding formula. And back in July of 2013, Governor Brown signed into legislation this local control funding formula. Its intention was to accomplish 2 major tasks. One was to give authority of governance back to the local agencies. And the other was to direct funding to some of our student populations who have been historically underserved. So it directed a lot of funding to those 3 groups that I've mentioned. So you can kind of see the quote here today. I'm signing a bill that is truly revolutionary. We are bringing government closer to the people, to the classroom where real decisions are made, and directing the money where the need is and the challenge is greatest. This is a good day for California. It's a good day for school kids, and it's a good day for our future. And so not all districts were happy with this decision because obviously if you don't have a lot of unduplicated kids or your unduplicated count isn't as high, then you don't get as much funding. However, a lot of our funding also comes from our property taxes, right, and other sources of revenue. So what it really was intended to do was kind of level the playing field for those who were really underserved in the past. The LCFF requires that school districts and county offices engage their local educational partners. And so that means different groups of stakeholders, parents, teachers, administrators, classified staff. It's really a holistic process. And the purpose is this annual planning to evaluate the progress in these 8 state priority areas. So for example, basic services, that just includes having credentialed teachers who can deliver services to students, making sure that all students meet a high academic standard and have access to those same standards. It's supposed to increase parent involvement, student achievement, student engagement, school climate, course access, and other outcomes. So the LCFF, the funding portion, is designed to drive or help the district create the plan, which we call the LCAP. So there's the funding and then there's the LCAP. They're 2 separate entities, but the purpose of the accountability plan is to really make sure that we're using those funds appropriately to help all students, but especially the students that we call unduplicated from those 3 different groups. There's 3 types of grants that come through the LCFF. We have what's called the base. So every student generates a certain amount of money. And that's what we call the base grant. Sorry. And we also have supplemental and concentration grants. So the supplemental and the concentration funds are the only funds targeted to improve student outcomes for all students. But again, especially those same 3 groups. So English language learners, foster youth, and those from low income households. The purpose of the LCAP is really to show how those funds will improve student outcomes. So you have an LCAP that establishes goals that the district wants to accomplish on behalf of its whole student body population, but especially with those kiddos in mind. And the LCAP is just the commemoration of that. And it also ensures that the district goes back annually and has those conversations. So there's this process of receiving information from feedback loops and in continuously improving our local plan. Even though it's a 3-year plan, we go back every year annually and we say, how did we do? Do we see the results of this? Are we meeting our goals? And if not, then we change it up a little bit so that we can do better for our students. So it's really this continuous cycle of improvement that we're trying to accomplish with the LCAP. When we look at our unduplicated count in Poway, and keep in mind that's how our funding is allocated to us, it's based on this percentage. Our total unduplicated percentage is about 22%. Of that, about 12% of our student population are English language learners. That's kind of a phrase we're going to be phasing out. We'll be using the term multilingual learners instead here shortly. About 14% are low income, and less than 1%, so 0.1% are foster youth. And so you can see special ed isn't really part of this equation. It's not, I mean, of course, all kids are included in the LCAP, and we do focus some of our goals on students with disabilities. But when we look at those 3 primary groups that the funding is designed to support, it's these 3 groups of students. So how that translates to us in the special education department. Now keep in mind, these are rough counts. The state doesn't track this information. So I had to go into our database and kind of pull rough estimates out. So this isn't exact, but when we look at our students who are unduplicated, in other words, a student with a disability who is also a language learner, or who is also foster youth, or who is also designated low income, we can see a little bit of a shift in our percentages. So our students with disabilities who are English language learners come in at 12.6%. Students who are designated low income, 25.4% of our students with disabilities are designated low income, and 0.2% are designated foster youth. So there's a little bit of a shift, but it gives you an idea about how that funding still does support our particular kiddos from our department. Last year, we do not currently have the updated LCAP, so it won't be ready until the 26th for review. And that's because the budget isn't complete and it's not supposed to be presented to our public groups until the budget is complete. But you can kind of see these funding sources. You have LCFF funds, other state funds, local funds, and federal funds that kind of for this combined total. But what I want to kind of point out is that this is not a whole picture of the funding that the school district receives. This is just a portion of it. And when we look at the special education budget, that's there's a little bit of overlay, but for the most part, that's different funding, different revenue, different expenditures. And so I kind of want to draw a line and separate the local, the special education local plan from the local control and accountability plan. The LCAP development process has 3 distinct but related functions. That's comprehensive strategic planning. In other words, that goal setting, how we're going to improve student services, make sure our kids all get what they need, and particularly target our traditionally underserved student populations. It also requires meaningful engagement of educational partners. And so the district engages with different groups of parents, such as our DAC, our district advisory committee, the DLAC parents who are parents of students who are language learners. So we engage all of these different stakeholders, teachers, administrators, classified staff, and we really try to get down to what do we need? What are the most critical things that we can do to improve student achievement across the board? And that's really the purpose of the LCAP. There's also an accountability and compliance piece. So we have those continuous feedback loops where we're really progress monitoring how we're doing in meeting our goals, or if we're not meeting them, how we're going to go back and fix that so that we do meet them in the future. And if they are working, what else can we do to improve or go bigger, make it better? Those are the three functions of the LCAP as a process. Poway's strategic LCAP goals, I won't read them all to you, but safe and inclusive learning environments is number one. There's a lot of work and actions that support this goal. The purpose is to engage students and staff with social emotional wellness supports. We're trying to create safe, positive, and healthy learning environments that demonstrate value for the individual. So each and every student, and advance each and every student towards their greatest potential. Our second goal is improving systems, structures, and programs to lead to increased student achievement and learning opportunities for all. And so that's our focus on equity, right? So creating equitable learning pathways to increase student success, leveraging inclusive practices, of course, is a main function of this particular goal. Personalizing learning and rigorous standards-based thinking opportunities that prepare all students to thrive in college, career, and life. And then aligning those opportunities for professional growth so that our staff are able to ensure that we reach this goal. Foster and maintain positive relations with parents and community. That is our third LCAP goal. And that's really seeking to increase engagement of our parents, business partners, community partners, fostering a shared sense of responsibility and accountability in order to deliver personalized, rich, and rigorous learning experiences. When the local control funding formulas plan, or the LCAP, is complete, we have a couple of student groups that we really focus on having their involvement. So DLAC and DAC are those two major bodies. We do try to extend that out to more. We try to give our CAC an opportunity to review. Education code doesn't require that, but we of course value the opinions and the insights of our CAC, and so we try to involve them in the process as well. So again, this is a 3-year plan that's updated annually, and it's required as a part of the local control funding formula. So with that, I think that to segue kind of into our budget plan, we had a conversation. Heather, I can share that or not. I think we can.
I have a question before you segue.
Sure.
So when you were on the screen that had the percentage breakdown of the 3 groups of people, of the 3 categories,
yes,
that had, and it broke down into the special needs categories, because I know we're 14.2% of the category, with the disabilities. How large of a percentage, I know, of the 14.2% does that percentage equate of?
So that's what these numbers represent. When we look at the percentage of students with disabilities, there's a couple of ways we can look at those numbers. When we look at our CalPADS is our California longitude, it's our pupil data system, basically. It keeps track of all our kids, but it also reports our information to the state. And so when we look at that CalPADS data, that percentage of student population is a little bit smaller, and I can kind of explain some of the reasons for that. But when we, as a special ed department, when we count up like all of our kids, how many kids in the district do we have that have an IEP, essentially? It's a little bit higher than if we remove our preschool aged students. So The state doesn't require the same amount of reporting for our preschool aged populations as they do for our school aged populations. So sometimes there's some variance, but you're right, we're right about 14%. If you were to add in, like our adult transition program students and our preschool students, then we're pushing up more towards 15%. So that's why it looks a little different depending on how you look at the numbers. When I calculated these percentages, I was looking at our CalPADS number. So of our 4,800 and some change students with disabilities in K through 12, I wanted to know how many are English language learners. But just of those particular groups, because that was the span that it was the only way I could pull the data from CalPADS, to be honest. So
Right.
basically that 12.6% represents our K through 12 students with IEPs. So it's 12.6% of those particular kids. There was like 547 to be exact, 547 English language learners in that group from kindergarten to.
So of the 14%, 12.6% of those kids are English language learners.
Correct, yes.
And 25.4% of the 14% are low income, and 0.2% of are foster.
So 25.4% of 4,800 and some change, or this total students with IEPs population. Yes.
Okay. So, and that's where
It's a little confusing.
no, that makes really good sense. But so when it's when you're looking at it as, I guess, for our committee, and I may be talking out of turn, but where it's a suggestion that we look at it, you're talking about out of the 14%, or how many thousand kids?
It's it's about 4,800, and I can't remember the exact number, but something like 62. So 4,862, around that range. It would be 12.6% of that.
So that looks like, that's like over 5,000 of those kids.
Right. So the 14%.
That's a pretty big chunk of our population fits this category.
Correct. Yes, true to that. So when we look at the 14% that are students with IEPs, we're looking at 14% of the 36,000 students in our district, or the total district student body population. I don't know.
Right. And I'm just looking at my 14%, and I'm looking at 25% are right here, or actually 37% are right here on this list. So that's still a pretty big percentage of my 14%.
Correct. And so correct. And so, the LCAP had a lot of input from Greg Mizell, who is here, and a lot of our goals, you can tell the district really did focus on improving conditions for students with disabilities. And that's part of all of that inclusivity work that the district has been doing. So you can see there's a lot of overlap, but they are two different distinct plans.
And I totally got that. I just wanted to make it clear that earlier it sounded like this was more for other committees, and we were just kind of reading through it. This is a pretty large chunk of our population, or it looks like about a third of our population are on this list that this report falls to. Am I correct? Or am I reading that wrong?
And the other thing I will tell you is that this particular set of data, the state isn't currently tracking. So we did reach out to CalPADS, and we have asked them to add a filter so that all districts in the state of California can now access this information a little bit more easily, because I think it is important to know how many of our students with disabilities are English language learners, right? That helps us monitor our own performance. It helps us to know how many of our students with disabilities come from low income homes, because they may require more support, especially if they're foster. And so those are all pieces of data that, like, as a SELPA director, I think are important to track. And so we are at this point asking CalPADS to help us in that endeavor. I imagine there will probably be some conversation at the state level, but hopefully eventually we'll get that filter and it'll be a little bit easier. Again, these are rough approximations. I had to kind of go in and manipulate our reporting to pull this information so that I could present it to you this evening.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Is it possible that some of that 12.6% also falls into that 25.4?
Yeah.
Are they
Yeah.
like, because a lot of our English language learners are also designated as
Correct.
low income.
Right.
So
That's-
it might not be, it's not that it's 12.6 and then it's 25.4, but it is showing us that we do have a large number of our low income students qualified, which maybe is an area of growth for us as a district to make sure that we're giving them the proper RTI supports moving forward.
Absolutely. That's a great point. It's definitely a point of inquiry, right? It's definitely, you know, something we should go, maybe that's something we should investigate a little bit further. So I appreciate you bringing that up. But yes, to answer your question, there are some duplicates because the CalPAD system isn't set up to really segregate out this information. So I worked with a couple of other SELPA directors to put in key pieces of information to draw down some of this, but it's definitely not perfect and there is some overlap.
This is Roosevelt. Can I just make a comment here? First of all, Jeanette, thank you for this information.
Yeah,
I think it's been really a good opportunity for the CAC to really understand this process. So I really appreciated that. I am piggybacking on what Heather had pointed out, and obviously what we're looking at here in terms of, you know, our students with who are unduplicated and are also students with disabilities. You know, I was concerned because I was looking at the numbers, 25%, 12.6%, obviously they're large percentages, but I think more importantly, in terms of what we're doing as a CAC, I think it's really significant for us to know this information and to know the process and how funding is kind of monitored on a district level. And are we looking for opportunities for families in these populations to really engage in the process, be a part of the CAC, maybe to understand what this is about? You know, typically in underrepresented populations, they are not the engaged families because it's not as accessible to them. So maybe there's an opportunity for the CAC to make sure, like our parent outreach, our ambassador programs, the things that we're kind of driving those initiatives on a CAC level, that we're really trying to target that. So I think that this is giving us that good information to really help us understand, you know, and you know, I found it significant that, you know, one of the strategic goals is to provide that personalized, rich learning experience. And this is, like I said, is really important for those individuals in underrepresented populations. So I appreciate learning this. I appreciate learning the difference between the local control accountability versus the LCAP. And I do feel that it is worthy of the CAC to be an active participant in this process, just because we have that lens that we look through. So I appreciate every opportunity to be able to be involved in this process.
Yeah. No, I was definitely not, Chris. I just want to make sure I was reading that right, because I was just like, well, that's a huge
confusing.
percentage.
Yeah, it's a little confusing. So outside of the LCAP, which is more you know, kind of a function of general education, we have unique to us the special education local plan, which is where the name SELPA is derived from. It stands for Special Education Local Plan Area. But essentially, one of the bigger functions of the SELPA is to create the local plan. And the local plan is designed to ensure that every student with a disability has access to a free and appropriate public education. And I'm simplifying that a little bit, but it's a plan that talks about how the system will be governed to ensure that services are rendered to all students that qualify and are being served on an IEP. And so that local plan is also a 3-year plan, very similar to the LCAP. It's a 3-year plan that we also update annually. It has its own budget. So LCAP has its own budget, and then the local plan has its own budget. And those are different sets of funding. There can be a little bit of overlap. For example, some of the LCAP money does support part of what we call the annual budget plan, which is the special education budget plan. But essentially, they are two distinct budgets. I did send that to the CAC. I think you have all had some opportunity to review it, and we are looking forward to receiving your feedback. And I think that that's probably it for this evening, unless there are more questions.
Jeanette, could you just explain what you did so beautifully in our conversation about the SELPA and how it's a local plan, but the funding comes from the federal? I want to kind of touch on that. So, because I think that's really significant to understand where the funding is coming from.
So a lot of our funding, when we look at our funding, and this is one of the things that I know that during our leg day, and I've heard a lot of our board members are really fighting to increase that IDEA portion, that 40%, or what they call full funding. It's not really full funding, but 40%. So our budget for special ed comes from a variety of sources. So there's what we call the 602 money, and 602 money is considered state aid. And a lot of that comes from, we do get an allocation from the property taxes. So there's an 8.3% tax that is, and that's where districts like Poway tend to do better than districts in lower socioeconomic areas. And so when Governor Brown implemented the LCAP process, he was trying to kind of create equity there. That was the point of it, because the really wealthy areas generate more revenue for the school districts. And so for a long time, when I was a new teacher, we all knew, there was even a book that you had to read when you became a teacher called Savage Inequalities. And it talked about how school districts in certain areas were granted all this additional funding. And so, you know, the rich were rich and the poor were poor. And that's kind of how the funding worked. And so the purpose of the LCFF was to create equity so that school districts that didn't have those higher tax bases would get additional funding. And so that's really the purpose of the LCAP, is to make sure that we're taking that funding and we're doing really important things that diminish the achievement gap, right? Because historically, districts from wealthier areas tended to be higher performing. More of their students went on to four-year universities. More of their students went on to Ivy League schools. And so since we've seen this different kind of funding formula, we have really seen a lot more equity across the board. My 4 nephews went to school in Hemet, which is a lower, tax base. Ultimately, 3 of them full ride scholarships to UC schools. So it really did kind of level out a lot of the differences in the funding, and that was really the purpose of it. But when we look at the special education local plan, what we call Section D, or the annual budget plan, a lot of that money really is coming from our tax base. So we get it from Part B IDEA. We get a different grant for our preschool age students. We even get a grant for our infants and toddlers. Of course, that's what we call a pass-through grant. So we get that money and we pass it on through to the San Diego County Office of Ed and the HOPE program, who provide services to the infants in our area. Because in special ed, you serve from birth to 21, and really actually 22, depending on the date of the child's birthday. So we have this whole big span of kids that we cover in our department that aren't covered by the general ed portion of our school district. So we get all these different grants. We get the Part B, which is our school age student grants. There's a Part C. Then we get the infant toddler, that's the pass through. We also get state mental health funding, federal mental health funding, and then our 602, there's also a funding source called 611, but you won't see that itemized in the budget plan. And then we use that, of course, to pay for specific things that we need to run our programs. Most of it goes to certificated and classified salaries and their benefits. But we also have portions that go to supplies, services and operations, what we call capital outlay. For example, if we had to buy a large piece of equipment that was over $5,000, we would charge that to our capital outlay. And then we have other outgoing financing that's available, that's in smaller amounts. But our special education budget, you can see from what I sent you this evening, is just shy of about $100 million.
When do you need our questions back? Because it was last night when we got the budget, and so my people did not get it till, because that was late last night. So my team did not get it till this morning. When do you need our questions back on the local plan budget?
So we have to hold the hearing by the last board meeting, but it would be really lovely if it was, we could, get it out sooner than that. Do you think that 2 weeks would be enough time?
That's for the group. Everybody, she's asking you guys, that not just me. Do you
2
think
weeks.
it's verbal?
It wasn't very long, like it was just a handful of pages that I
Okay.
looked at, so.
Yeah, if we could get some answers back, and if you guys have questions, if that would be great.
Okay.
Send them back to the PUSD email, and then we can send one giant list to her combined. That would be great. And then they can send us, we can forward them on to, is it you I'm forwarding them on to, Jeanette, or is it Mercedes, or am I sending them to you and then you're going to forward them to Mercedes?
I am the budget plan and Mercedes is all LCAP. So
Okay,
yes,
perfect.
send them to me.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, if everybody could, we could shoot for, so you want them by Memorial Day or the 31st? Is that what we're shooting for?
Yes, if that's okay with you guys.
Okay.
When we've had meetings in the past, we did bring that into consideration when we drafted the plan. We've also provided this year for our staff, all of our staff, our certificated and our classified staff received a really nice raise, and our classified staff were also provided improved benefits. So our costs have gone up a bit. And so just keep in mind that some of that, for example, when we looked at, those conversations about like our aides aren't really making enough money, the district really did invest itself. Mr. Mizell takes that back to cabinet. They have those conversations, and the district really did invest itself this year in trying to kind of true up some of the benefits and pay for our classified staff, which is what our special education aides are designated as. So,
yeah, and I don't know how many
kinds of-
people that announcement went out to. If you want to say that, because I was at the meeting, but I don't know if everybody that happened at the last meeting, correct, Greg? Wasn't there an announcement about that?
So at the last meeting, we awarded bonuses tied to COVID. So, and those are based on your full or part-time status, not based on position. So the bonuses were the same between certificated and classified employees. If you're full-time, you get $1,000. If you're part-time, you get whatever that percentage is, 75% of 1,000 or 50% of 1,000, 25% of 1,000, whatever the number is. And our employees were told that they would receive those raises by June 30th. So I think the other thing that Jeanette's referencing is the last round, last year of negotiations, everybody got 4% raises. And on the PSEA side, the classified side, there was a considerable improvement to their health and welfare benefit package to the tune of a couple $1 million annually. So it's not, we haven't arrived. I'd be the last one to say that. Like, I don't share that to suggest that we don't still have a challenge. Attracting, recruiting, retaining qualified people. I would simply say that there's definitely been movement and an effort to be responsive. The pandemic has made it harder, as I'm certain you all know, right? Wages and inflation have both gone way up, and we're not positioned to turn on a dime. Like, that's not how our budget works. We're not a for-profit company. So we're aware of how the landscape has shifted, and we're working very hard to catch back up to it. So to be competitive.
And I wasn't trying to put you in the spot. And Jeanette, I wasn't trying to take that away from you. I know the call went out to everybody from a lot of parents, and I don't think anybody heard that it actually, some of it did happen. And I wanted to make sure that you guys, that the word got out, that it did happen at the meeting. So.
And I just wanted to let you guys know, I share that to let you know that the information that you provide to us about community thoughts and perceptions, like we really do take that seriously. Greg takes that seriously. He takes that conversation up to the cabinet, and decisions do come out based on a lot of that information that you provide to us. So we appreciate that. You're helping us kind of keep a pulse on the community thoughts and perspectives and needs. It's really important work.
So if we're getting you the questions on the budget by the 31st, can you follow up with us, do you think by the 6th of where for follow-up?
I
Is that
certainly
fair?
can.
Perfect. Okay.
Heather, just a time check. We still have quite a bit to go and we only have 30
Nope.
minutes.
And I did warn everybody that I knew that we were going to run over, but yeah, perfect. Thank you. If no one else has any other questions for Jeanette on that, we're going to move on as soon as I find the page of the questions. We have some questions for the district liaison staff that were submitted. I'm not sure which of the staff are going to answer them. The first one is, are critical skills and ASD classes being combined at the middle school level? And if so, why haven't current enrolled as well as incoming families been notified?
Hi, you guys. So for those of you that I haven't had the opportunity to meet yet, my name is Michelle Julie. I'm one of the program specialists. I currently have the pleasure of overseeing 3 of our Mod Severe programs at the middle school level. So I thought I could help kind of with some of this clarification. And then Stephen Whitaker is also here to join and help add additional clarification as well.
Hi, everyone.
So yes, as of right now, what we are looking at doing and what we've coordinated with a lot of our staff is the combination of the 2 Mod Severe programs at the middle school level. And there's a bunch of reasons why, and I want to assure everyone that there's a lot of thought and time and the best intentions kind of came from all of this. And so as we've been reflecting on making our educational opportunities better for all students, one area that we identified that was not equitable for a lot of our Mod Severe population in the ASD and the critical skills programs was these placements. So hypothetically, if I have a student, let's say, who's slotted for critical skills and their home school is Twin Peaks, they wouldn't be able to go there because there isn't a critical skills program there. And so they may have to go to Bernardo Heights, which means that as they matriculate to high school, where Poway High would likely be their home high school, all of their peers that are in that class, all of the gen ed friends that they've made in best buddies would all likely be going to RB. So that student would lose a lot of the connections that they've built through their time in middle school. The other piece is that as we've had students move in and as programs have filled, some of our students have had to be bused across town, right? So right now we have 2 critical skills programs that are at Bernardo Heights and Mesa Verde. And then we have 2 ASD classes that are housed at Twin Peaks and D39. So when we are keeping students within a very specific program based on its title, what's happening is a lot of those students are then having to have very long transportation routes. So in addition to not being able to access their community through the community-based instruction, so all of that instruction may be on a completely different side of town that they wouldn't be accessing or be able to independently get to. They're having longer transportation routes, they're losing access to peers as they matriculate, and there's just a lot of negative impact. And we heard from many families over the years. I've had the pleasure of overseeing Twin Peaks and Bernardo Heights for 3 and 4 years now. So as my families have come through, they've really expressed concern about not being able to get closer to their home middle schools, and in many cases, not be able to access the same peers. And so a lot of families have made, requests to transfer to different high schools so that their students can continue with friendships, just like any other student who would have the same population of peers from elementary to middle to high. So the goal of blending the 2 programs is twofold. One is it gives all of our families a better opportunity to access as close as possible their home middle school. And in those cases, that allows those families to also then access their home high school, where a lot of these student siblings go, where families and cousins and other students and their families go. But the other piece is also to utilize the impact of being in their home communities as part of their programming. So at the middle school level, our students start community-based instruction, and a lot of our programs go out into the communities and practice shopping, ordering food, things like that. So if we're able to start that sooner, those students are more likely to gain more independence as they matriculate to high school and then to our adult transition program, because they've been able to be taught within their own home community for longer. So right now I do have a few students whose home middle schools are Meadowbrook. And for example, some of those students might be bused all the way over to Mesa Verde or D39. So any community-based instruction that they do, right, those students wouldn't necessarily be able to take that information and apply it to their current home community when they go out with their families or when they matriculate to high school. The other piece and the other reasoning for this is we've been working with our middle school and high school teachers to do a lot of vertical alignment. And so one of the things that we've seen at high school is the blending of these programs has really done great service to our students, again, because they get to access their home high schools. The programs are working on the same skill sets. And so with this blending, then our middle schools are able to better vertically align with their feeder schools and their feeder patterns to the high schools. And so those teachers are able to kind of collaborate more in what those programs will look like and what the preparation needs to be for students to matriculate to high school, if that helps make sense. Stephen, was there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, so the thing that's also just good information to consider as well with this is that we have always had students with ASD in our critical skills classrooms, and we've always had students with other disabilities in the ASD classes. I think that, you know, as a society and a district, we're moving past, you know, placements based on a student's disability. And so kind of shifting the title of the program to be in line with the credential that the teachers have, which is called moderate severe special education credential. So moving the titles of those programs into that is also just a huge benefit with that. So again, you know, it's not like a restructure that's occurring. It's more about the fact that we want to place kids into the support environments that they need, not necessarily based on the class that has the title, you know, closest aligned to their qualification. And again, some of the benefits of that are the students that maybe have been pushed out to an ASD class for whatever reason, are in the chain middle school that doesn't actually feed to the high school that they're going to end up going to. And as a result for that, you know, 3 years from now, those students are going to have to change peer groups and change kind of those things, and to establish that structure that really allows them to attend the middle school that's in the same feeder pattern to their high school, really helps the students be in a better spot when we do have them go to high school. And then the other component too is you know, there have been surveys sent out to staff, as we do yearly, about the level of support that they need and kind of information that they get. Teachers get information, as many of you are aware, transition meetings have started and all those kind of things. So teachers get a lot of information about students that are coming to them. And then now is the time where that survey gets sent out, where teachers can provide that information of, hey, I'm getting a student with some differences, right? For example, a teacher reached out and said, you know, I don't have a lot of information about alternative augmentative communication, and I have a student coming up to me that has that. How can I get that support? And that's where we can provide those specialized training to those teachers and get all that information going.
And I think the biggest piece that we want to emphasize is that nothing's going away. I know there was some concern that a program is being lost or that we're losing part of our continuum. What we're doing is we're actually adding to it. We're providing more opportunities for our students and our families so that they aren't only allotted 2 potential placements. There are 4 placements that a IEP team can look at when we're programming for the student, so that, again, it can be individualized based on the student's needs and take into all of those positive accounts and repercussions of letting them access their home school, or at least the nearest school to their home school that's within that same community. And the other emphasis that I want to make is the programs are the same when it comes to staffing. So they're staffed the same. They have the same type of curriculum. The programs utilize the exact same assessments. We have professional developments where they all get together along with the teachers from the high school and collaboratively work together to create curriculum and create goal banks of ways to kind of assess students' progresses with different skills. They share resources, all of those things. So a lot of that is already occurring behind the scenes. And now we're just creating an opportunity where our students can benefit even more from that.
Perfect. So most of the families that this is happening to, they are aware of it. That was the biggest concern. I believe it seems like this is not just like a random, like the transition is not happening in May and people are being aware. You guys pre-prepped for all of that, and they know it's coming, correct?
Yeah, and
absolutely.
there's no impact on current families that are already in those programs. So no one's being moved. Nobody's being asked to change schools. We're just, as students matriculate in now, we're providing more opportunities and placement options for those teams to consider.
I just want to make sure. Okay, that's
absolutely.
I'm sure that was a big concern. Okay, the second question was, with the shifting of special education classes and students, there are teachers who worked strictly with kids for autism for a really, really long time. And now they have students with more critical skills or medical disabilities. Will they be receiving additional training during all of this shifting around and moving around with inclusion practices? And are they going to be receiving what kind of training and how?
Yeah, so again, students, teachers that had the ASD classes or teachers that had the critical skills classes always had students with a variety of disabilities within those classrooms. So again, the teachers have had students with autism in the critical skills class and other disabilities within the autism class. So they've had exposure and experience with those students. And then the other thing too, just to note, is that we provide a variety of training that's available to teachers every year. And as I had stated before, as these transitions are coming up in this time of year, teachers receive a survey that they can provide what sort of additional training and supports they need. And then that's provided to them either going into the end of the school year. There may be opportunities leading up to before the school year starts in August, and then ongoing support from a lot of our departments for those, whether it be our behavior support team departments, whether it be our augmentative and alternative communication departments and AT. Those supports are provided to those teachers as well.
And it's not just critical skills teachers that are getting that, Stephen. It's all special education teachers are getting that, because all these kids are not just going into critical skills classes. We have a lot of
totally. And all of these are available to all of our teachers. Absolutely.
I just want to make sure the survey is going out.
Yes. Broader. Yeah. Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah, and I think the other piece too, because I know, Heather, you brought up some different medical disabilities and the medical impact for some of those students. So our district nurses every year will come out for any students who have any healthcare plans or access any type of procedures with nursing services at the beginning of the year, and provide training to any of those teachers who are new to those students, as well as our instructional aides and general education teachers if applicable. So for example, if a full inclusion student who's accessing multiple general education classes, has certain procedures or things done during the day, then that district nurse would make sure that everybody is trained as well. So there's also that layer. It's not just applied to the students in the critical skills class, it's wherever that student goes and whatever their programming looks like, those training options are provided. And we've asked specifically for the middle school mod severe teachers to let us know, based on their transition meetings, if there are things that they need training on maybe a little bit more urgently, versus some of the just district-wide training that we'll be making available to everybody. But we want to make sure we target some of those areas if there are students that are coming up that teachers want to make sure they have more information or training on specifically, so that they're ready to go in August.
And like I said, again, I'm just concerned about, I know this question was asked that way, but I'm looking at, and you both have had my child, I'm looking at the kids that are in that not severe, the moderate middle, and that that they need help too, and they have more needs than people realize. So I just want to make sure that that's going out to the middle ground.
Totally.
That they're ending up in
Absolutely.
gen ed. So
Yeah. And that's a big kind of conversation that's going on with inclusive practices within the
Right.
district anyway, is how do we support students that may have higher levels of maybe behavioral needs or sensory regulation type needs? And how do we support those kids in an environment that's more with the general population than maybe they were previously? Absolutely.
Perfect. Okay. I just want to make sure. So I know parent ambassadors, if no one has any other questions for the team, thank you guys so much. I know parent ambassadors were next on the agenda, but I know we're going to be running over, which I did warn the CAC members that I thought we were, because we had a very large meeting. I need to make a schedule agenda adjustment if no one has any objections to move the membership subcommittee meeting up, if that's okay with everybody. Some thumbs up. Is everybody okay?
Yeah.
I'm going to give the
Super
floor to
fast, I
Alex.
promise. Super fast, I promise. Okay, so the membership renewals, I just want to make sure that, you know, everybody's aware that when they signed up for the CAC, it's, you know, a 2-year commitment. And then you renew once your 2 years is up, you would renew again. Obviously, life happens, things change. If you can't stay a part of it, you just have to let us know. We do have 3 people that are stepping down from the CAC, and they all hold leadership positions. And I want to offer people the availability or the opportunity to speak now or forever hold their peace, or then I'll speak on their behalf. I think that of the 3, I may be one of the only ones. I'm moving to Tennessee. So with that being said, I can no longer be part of the CAC after the end of this school year. And I'm really sad, but I might, you know, pop on occasionally just to see how everything's going and check in and see some familiar faces. I am the head of the membership committee, and Miss Tristy Greats has already offered to take that over. It does have to be somebody internal to take it over. And so she knew that I was going to be stepping down and offered to take it on, as she has to take attendance anyway. With that being said, we need a timekeeper. So if anyone that's going to stay on the CAC is willing to be a timekeeper, please let us know. And then the other 2 committees, I do not see. Kate Whelan is stepping down, and so she's the media committee chair. So we're going to need a new media committee chair. And then David Choi is also stepping down. So we will need a new community outreach committee chair. Again, the committees may change next year when you guys develop new goals. So just know that we are going to need some people to step up and be leaders and be committee chairs.
And Devin Green is also stepping down. She just announced. So we're excited to see that. But thanks for letting us know. We're very sorry to hear that. So Alex, I did not approve you to move anywhere. So
I'm sorry.
But yeah, so the chair's positions, it's just something to keep in mind, everybody, and we will definitely, because the communication and media may be something we were recombine again, and that can be talked about in the fall. But yeah, if everybody needs to start for next month looking at, we need to know if you are recommitting to the committee. And we will talk about the executive team next month. So everybody except Alex, thank you.
I'm sorry. It breaks my heart because this has been a committee that's been near and dear to my heart, advocating on behalf of the parents that I serve, that can't necessarily come to these meetings is something that I take pride in. I know that Tristy also serves the same population, and she will make sure that She's the annoying voice saying, did you translate those forms? Is that going to be translated? Don't forget to translate it.
Yeah.
Hey, don't post it until it's translated.
So you're not going to be at the, thank you. That is one thing that we did do in the population. We have every single form, and that is due to you and Trustee that does get translated now. That is a goal that we reached. So because of you too. So
Can I just thank Alex for being the voice for that population of students and parents? It's been very important. So thank you. We appreciate you. We're going to miss you. You've been incredible. And we hope you pop in and surprise us on some of these.
yeah, I'm going to be stalking her. So because we're running late and I'm not going to cry. So parent ambassadors, we're going to move on to the PA information.
Okay, so you do want a report. All right.
Yeah, sorry. I did warn everybody. We knew it was all stacked meeting. Sorry, guys.
Okay. Well, just real quick, I just feel like putting the goal of the parent ambassador in the forefront of your mind, and that's just getting those parent connections and presence on their campuses. So with that in mind, we have about 40 parent ambassadors now, and it's gotten to a point where I needed to kind of streamline maybe the process a little bit of overseeing all of them and what they're doing at each site and what we'd like to see them do. So we had to create sort of something called a coordinator, and they're all volunteers still. So there are about 8 of them. And we had our first official volunteer PA coordinator meeting last Friday. So they're going to be overseeing like a little cluster of schools to kind of also just see about, reporting back what's going on with those parent ambassadors as well. At the meeting, we discussed ideas around how to get more presence on the campuses going forward. So right now we're talking about back to school, like what the first day is going to look like at the elementary sites, refining maybe a campus orientation for the secondary sites. And maybe sort of having a fast pass for some of the SPED students to kind of see if they can, have a certain time frame for, some of their orientation. Just kind of brainstorming at this point. Also, today was our last PA workshop for the school year. Our speaker was Carla McDougall, and she's a counselor from Deer Canyon who spoke on the role of the SSAs at the elementary school sites. And this was in response to one of the PAs wanting to know how the elementary sites are addressing social inclusion. We have discussed also that going forward with these workshops that our hope is to have it opened up to the parent population in special education. So we do know that all of these are being scheduled now for Monday, once a month at the DO. And we're looking for, any suggestion that also if you have speaker topics, you can reach out to me with those. We will probably repeat some of the ones we've done this last year, but once I get that on the calendar, we will share out. And also at this time, the PAs have distributed almost 4,500 flyers. They've given it to the hands of each principal. And the point there was to get it into the hands of the students. So hopefully they're bringing those home. Observations are in full force, in addition to the 20 that were scheduled last month. This month, we've done another 16. So keeping this in mind, also helping to do some of these and get more presence on the campuses. I'm looking at maybe introducing more of the parent ambassadors to help with this and to be that parent-to-parent connection when they're giving the observations. So that's pretty much it right now. Just continually amazed by the parents' willingness to give their time to this program. So grateful for all of them.
Thank you so much. And you've done a great job getting it off and going so quickly. Thank you so much, Deborah.
I'd just like to add something really quick. I did get one of your flyers and it was wonderful because last month we were talking about summer programs and how to find out about them. And we talked about the parent ambassadors would be a great place. And I wrote it down and I forgot to reach out to parent ambassadors, and I got the flyer in my son's backpack. It reminded me, I used the QR code on there. It was so easy to use and I got a response back within a couple of hours. It was wonderful. So thank you. What you guys are doing really is working and I just appreciate it.
Yay. Thank you.
Jody Payne, you're up. Thank you so much. And thank everybody. We are gonna extend a little bit tonight because I know it's a really stacked. We're trying to get it all in the last couple month meetings. Thank you so much for hanging in with us.
Yeah, well, thank you. Okay, so I wanted to take an opportunity and to expand on questions that had been generated or were generated in our last CAC meeting. And those questions were related to mental health and specifically to ERMS, or educationally related mental health services. And so I would like to introduce you to our team members from our ERMS team. We have Miss Sandra Cummings, who's here, and we have Miss Shelley Fouch-Doig, who is here. And they're going to take the next probably 5 minutes or so and go over the process as far as MTSS, and they'll expand on that for you, and ERMS. So with that said, Sandra, are you able to share your screen?
I am. I'm going to engage my screen share right now, Jody.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so as Jody just perfectly introduced us, we are here to talk a little bit about social emotional multi-tier systems of support in Poway Unified School District. And one of those tiers is more specifically education related mental health services.
Yeah, and I'd like to piggyback on what Sandra shared. So I wanted to speak first. I'm sorry, we're next to each other and I'm getting her feedback. Can you guys hear that?
Sorry, just one second. I'm trying to find my.
No, we're not hearing the feedback.
Okay, it might just be for me. I'm sorry, I was hearing it. So I think what's really important for us to kind of highlight right now is that MTSS really just provides us with a framework with how we're delivering social emotional supports to students across our school district, right? We're a huge system, and how are we going to kind of integrate and make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our students? And so I like this visual because it really gives you kind of, a nice representation of how we're meeting all of our students' needs. So if you look at the very bottom tier, the name itself, universal supports, really speaks to the fact that these are the types of supports that are available to all of our students across the district. And in fact, 98% of our students really will benefit from just these kind of what we would consider to be lower level supports. And so when you kind of, you think about what is that, what do you exactly mean by that? And, when I was a school psychologist supporting some of our local elementary programs, if you're walking around the campuses and you're noticing kind of the signage, or you're noticing, the common language of character counts, and, at our high school level, some of the more inclusive practices. So those are the types of supports that we're referencing that are at this universal level. And really by nature and by design, they're proactive, they're preventative, really just kind of highlighting, what are student expected behaviors, what are pro-social skills. And so these are supports that will really kind of address, the broadest portion of our population. And then Sandra's going to speak to tier 2.
Okay, so for those students who are not responsive to that tier 1 intervention, we move to tier 2, which is the special education identification process. As more specifically as it relates to social, emotional, and mental health functioning, these students are assessed for initial eligibility for special education services, or they may already have an IEP and are exhibiting some social, emotional related concerns. And so we have currently 569 special ed students, or 1.6% of our population, who are receiving related service counseling. So that is counseling at the site with the site psychologist. And then from there, we move on to tier 3, which is education related mental health services. And this is approximately 0.5% of our total population is in receipt of ERMS. And so this is a more targeted therapeutic level of counseling support that students are provided when they're either not responsive to the existing level of counseling support provided by the site psychologist, or perhaps there's a significant change in functioning and they need something more intensive. And so 169 of our students are in receipt of ERMS. And Shelley will take tier 4.
Yeah. Tier 4 is actually kind of the world in which I live primarily for the district. I am the residential treatment center case manager and also do case manage our students that are in non-public schools. So when we're looking at the MTSS in the tier 4, this is really the alternative placements, the restricted placements, and Jody just prompted us to kind of further describe what MTSS stands for. That's multi-tiered system of support. So the multi-tiers are these 4 different layers of supports. And so when we look at tier 4 alternative placements, these are our students with the most critical needs. You know, it's not a huge number of students, about 44 students, that's 0.1% of our student population. And even when we look within this tier, there is a continuum within it as well. So when I was speaking to that continuum, behavior and academic, social, emotional support, those are programs that are housed at our elementary campus. We have one at our middle school and also at high school. So those are kind of self-contained programs to really meet the needs of students that have pretty significant social, emotional, and behavioral needs. And then kind of from there, we do have the ability to place students within local programs that are separate campuses within our local San Diego community. And those are called non-public schools. They're 100% special education services. So when we're making that type of a determination, it's kind of with the understanding that these students, you know, have such significant needs that we're suggesting that, you know, they might not necessarily need to be accessing some of the general education curriculum or general education student body population. And then we also have North County Academy, which is also considered a non-public school. However, it's only students there that are district placed. Some of our non-public schools, parents can place their children there privately if they choose to do so. And then really higher up within the continuum is residential treatment center. And so even within residential treatment center, we have you know, a hierarchy as well. We're able to place some of our students within the state of California. However, those that might require more physical kind of boundaries and maybe are at risk for elopement and other pretty significant safety concerns, we might have to actually place them out of state as well. So that kind of captures, you know, a broad kind of stroke and overview of our multi-tiered system of supports. So Sandra, do you want to move on to the next slide? So who qualifies for these additional services, how and for what? So shall I go ahead and do tier 1? Right. So as I noted earlier, these are supports that are available to all general education students, and they're primarily implemented by, you know, the general ed teacher, supported by the administration and support staff. You know, who qualifies? There are, you know, specific supports that might be available to general ed students. And, you know, the things that kind of come to mind are check-ins with school counselor. If students are having maybe, you know, for example, adjustment difficulties related to a divorce or maybe transitioning from elementary to middle and just need a little bit extra support. Some students might even access 504 accommodation plans. And so Sandra, I'll pass it back to you for tier 2.
Sandra,
You can't hear Sandra.
Okay, thank you guys. For tier 2, that is our related service counseling intervention. So in order for a student to qualify for related service counseling, they have to meet one of the 13 eligibility categories. They can't have more than one. They can have a primary and a secondary. Like I touched upon earlier, it can those areas of need can be identified through social emotional need can be identified through the initial assessment or a supplemental assessment. And then they would qualify for related service counseling with that site psychologist at their comprehensive site. And we offer that individual counseling at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. And then tier 3, like we touched upon earlier, these are students who meet eligibility criteria for ERMS, have significant mental health needs that interfere with educational progress and have not been responsive to that lower level of intervention, more specifically with that related service counseling. So we have a very robust assessment process that we utilize to determine eligibility for ERMS. And as an outcome of an ERMS assessment, a student can be provided with individual counseling, parent counseling, and psychological services. And Shelley, do you want to move to tier 4?
Sure. So who qualifies for Tier 4 alternative programs? This program is really available to students with IEPs whose mental health is really interfering with their educational performance to a really significant degree. And even to the degree by which they can't necessarily access their comprehensive campus, right? So they're needing maybe an alternate program, like the BASIS program that I described, local, non-public, or residential. And really the way that that's determined is through an ERMS reevaluation. These students would likely have already accessed ERMS services, and that could involve individual counseling, group parent counseling. And, for whatever reason, maybe their condition might be so limiting, or they might just have experienced, significant life stressors, which have led them to kind of impaired functioning. And so we're looking at, do they require something more than that they're currently being offered? So we conduct an ERMS reassessment in that instance. And the assessment would be conducted by one of our school psychologists who's an ERMS assessor within the district. And the data would be brought to the IEP team, shared through a review of the assessment report. And then really it's to the team to determine what is the least restrictive environment that the student's social emotional needs can be met. And sometimes that, a determination happens to be a restrictive placement because that's truly what the child requires in order to obtain some educational benefit and make progress.
So we're going to move on to our last slide tonight. We just wanted to maybe discuss the common myths associated with education-related mental health services. And so, Shelley, you want to go with number 1?
Sure, absolutely. So this first myth that we have here, we hear quite a bit. So does a student need a medical diagnosis to qualify for ERMS? And the answer is false. Although a student may have a medical diagnosis, it is not a requirement to qualify for ERMS. When we're looking at conducting that evaluation to determine a need, we're looking at the educational impact of the student's social emotional concerns.
Okay, so myth number 2, a medical provider can write a prescription for ERMS. This is also false. Although an IEP team will consider that recommendation of an outside provider, eligibility for mental health support through ERMS is established through an ERMS assessment.
All right, and our final myth. So number 3, a student has to qualify under an emotional disturbance to receive ERMS. And this is also false. Although it's more likely that a student with an emotional disturbance qualifies for ERMS than any other students with other disabilities, because this is the primary reason that's driving their IEP. The disability category does not drive programming, and access to ERMS is really based on the identified need through assessments.
Okay, so that's our last slide, Jody.
Excellent. Well, Sandra and Shelley, thank you very much for coming in and presenting this evening. I don't know, Heather Plotsky, if we're allowed to answer questions, or if it's a presentation, if people had questions and they entered those into the chat and we would respond outside of here.
Yeah, I think on a time basis, I think that might be the better, or if you want to put your email in, because especially since it's such a sensitive subject, that might be the best way to have, that way. But thank you so much. I would like to ask that if you could send that slideshow, or if you could have, get it to Jeanette so she could get it posted somewhere on our website in the appropriate place, because that was fantastic. And that would be a great resource to have somewhere posted. But thank you very much, ladies, because we have received several questions about that recently. So thank you. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the chair report, and thank you very much for hanging on with us, everybody, because I know this is a lot tonight. So this is the chair report. I have a couple things on here. One, and I'll try to make it quick. I did go to legislative day with Jeanette. It was May the 4th, because it was May the 4th be with you. It was legislative day, and it was virtual this year. So we submitted letters, and instead of meeting with our individual representatives this year, because a lot of the other SELPAs were doing that as well, I am gonna resubmit thank you letters and follow-up letters, because the budget's not final, and I know that they're voting one more week, and I know just today on edsource.org that our governor has proposed more money to it, so they're still negotiating. So I plan on resubmitting to see if I can do some more begging for money. The proposals that I requested in my letter were specifically to, because the SELPAs gave us a list, but it was to reject the ERMS funds be directly sent to the LEAs, because I believe that the ERMS funds should be kept in the special education money, even though, because that was one of the things that the governor has suggested because of inclusive practices. He felt that the money should go into the general education fund. I believe that that should not happen because special education, it still needs to be kept for our kids, the money that's determined for our kids. And there was another vote to support AB 602 to increase SPED funding to a by a formal amount of $500 million was on there as well. One of the things that happened was during our virtual meetings, one of the things that when I wrote the letter, so there was a couple different samples that got sent to the district, and most of them were very formally written, and then they had pictures of their kids and then our name. So I did not choose to go that route. I've been to the day before personally. Actually, I think the last one that went personally was 2019 was the one I went to, and watching those happen, the people that took notice were the personal stories. So I did write it in a very conversational, much more in your face, like, you know, this is what's happening to our kids. Like, and so I did write it as a conversational tone. And so that's what happened. Beforehand, though, we had a several-hour meeting, and it was a keynote speaker, and I did put it in the agenda, and I put a website on there for Elijah Stacy, who was a young gentleman, and I really think everybody should take a look at that, the spot on the agenda that I attached. Take a look at his book and his story, and he's a survivor, and he's his own special needs. And his family, I mean, they lost one child and another, and he gave such an emotional and inspirational speech. I wrote one quote on here: overcoming adversity means to turn a particular challenge you're facing into a way to better yourself. It's a process of turning an obstacle into a way to strengthen your character. But this was a very young gentleman that wrote this book and has become a speaker, but it was, I don't think there was a dry eye. Would you agree, Jeanette, in that room? So like I said, I posted the link in here, and yeah, I'm trying to speak as fast as
I feel like the whole day was super emotional.
Yeah, it just was. But his story in particular, so take a look at the website. I did post it on the link there. The new business I posted for, and this is related to the more for our members to take a look at, It's the first reading of the proposed agenda for dates. I know they're super wonky for 2022, 2023. We can talk about it in detail, or you guys can email me. They are really funky. Heather and Tristy and Jeanette and Danielle and I really looked at them. None of them have been, they're not set in stone. This is the first reading of them for tonight. I don't have to read them. They're emailed and they're attached to you guys. We also put in the fall or the meet and greet, which would be the first meeting event, which would be the 8th of August. We blocked out Greg for the entire week and the last week of May for the excellent, so we don't know, so we can get that out of the way. And there's 2 in May because the school year is really weird this next year. We get out, there's only 1 week in June of school, so there's not a double. That's why there's 2 weeks when you look at the schedule. So take a look at that, let me know, and then if there's questions, I can answer that outside of the meeting. So if you have a weird thing, but we really tried to do it around the Board of Ed meetings that we could find, around school holidays that we could figure out, and around the Board of Ed meetings that we knew we had, and the holidays that we already knew were coming up. So, but you will find some like odd, it's not always the 3rd week. The holidays just skipped around really weird.
Heather, can we put a time date for people to respond to the dates? When do you need to know by?
Well, we definitely need to vote on it at the next meeting. So I don't even,
okay, so please, June 8th, 7th, let me see.
I think it's the 6th is our next
June
meeting.
7th.
June 2nd.
Yeah, can you guys try to get back to me with questions? Maybe let's even say by the 24th.
Okay.
Let's just not even make it that long out. Just give me a question, questions, because, and again, we don't know if we're going to go digital. We haven't figured that out. We're hoping to go at least the first couple, maybe. That's going to be up to us as a board. Greg's and his team are looking to see if we have to go in person, what they can do to let the families be on live. There's a whole bunch in process there. And wheels are turning, and Jeanette's working on it with the IT team and things. So
I think it would be nice.
It took so long to get it out.
Yeah, I think it would be nice if we could do a hybrid.
Right, and that's what we're trying to look at to see if we can do that. It's just the how and what can we do. So that's what we're looking at.
The tech part.
Yep. Jennifer Burks was in play, and so they were definitely trying to figure it out. Correct, Jeanette, right? So we were definitely working on grabbing everybody.
Right. So the one thing that, the one piece of information that we received from legal was that our first meeting would need to be in person. And then we developed that resolution to vote every month by month. The other thing that's important to keep in mind is that is only as long as there is an emergency order in place.
And even if we have at the meet and greet, if we have quorum at the meet and greet, we can have that to vote at the special meeting to have the first meeting in, correct?
Correct.
That would count as far as I know, to have the September meeting, and if we did want to go that route, because it would be 30 days out. So we could have September's officially in Zoom if we want to do that, but we can decide that next month.
Right.
So if everybody could get back by the 24th, I know I'm hurrying you guys, but yeah, so let's shoot that as a goal. And Tristy, can you send out a reminder for that?
Yes, will do.
Heather, I know you've got your events tomorrow. You want to give it a quick?
Yes, I'll be quick. So we have our Excellence Award tomorrow. Very excited, and it's becoming a very large event than we expected, but it's going to be great. And I can't wait to share the video of photos and videos compiled like we did last year at our meeting next month, our last CAC business meeting. So that'll be great and wonderful. So at our next meeting, get your tissues ready as well, because as you know from last year, it was very touching, heartwarming, and just awesome to see. So I'm really looking forward to that. As Heather Plotsky said, we're going to start working on that meet and greet so that we can hopefully have that. It's tentative for August 8th, Monday, August 8th, but hopefully we can keep that date because it'll be before all the registration and, you know, because Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of that week is usually when all the back to school stuff, nights, pickups of books and everything start to happen. So we wanted to make it just a, you know, a day sooner to kind of help that process and make it also a little bit later and a little shorter. So we were looking at like a 5 to 7 p.m. for the meet and greet. Any volunteers? I've already had a couple of volunteers say they'd like to help with the meet and greet. So that's awesome. And we're hopefully going to be having the Kona Ice for that again, since that's what such a success. And yeah, just feel free to reach out to me or the PUSC email, because I check both, if you would like to volunteer. I think that's it. And I'm not going to give too much info for tomorrow, just that we'll be going to 5 school sites tomorrow and 1 school site on Friday. And it's a surprise, so I will not be discussing any of that info until our next meeting. But, you know, you guys may see stuff, who knows, before then, as word gets out. So, yeah, can't wait for everyone to get to enjoy that. That's it for me.
Okay. I had a typo on the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I didn't. So the next, I had the next Board of Ed meeting is on June 2nd. They also have one on June 16th. Heather, Marshall, and I will be presenting, I believe, on June 16th. Correct me if I'm wrong, Greg. We have to do the final board report. I'm sorry, I skipped you, Rosabelle, didn't I? I'm sorry, I did skip you, Rosabelle.
That's okay. Oops.
I did.
That's okay. I have nothing to report. Jeanette did a great job in informing us in that process.
So the 26th is when we're looking at, and they're going to give us updates about when we're going to get the room. So, okay, perfect. Sorry, I didn't mean to skip over you in case you wanted to talk. I was just in speed mode at this point for you guys. So yeah, the June 2nd and the 16th, and we will be presenting our final Board of Ed reports then. The next CAC meeting is June 7th, and it'll be via Zoom as we voted. And I do have one shout out. I know it's been a long night. I feel bad that David is not here. He never did pop in, correct? Did David?
No.
So I did want to send out a congratulations. I sent one in person to him, but David received the 2021-2022 Palomar Council PTA Honorary Service Award for the year. So I wanted to give him a shout out for that. So I also wanted to send a huge shout out to Heather Marshall's team for all the huge hard work. And I would rather be the CAC president than be on the events squad. So, but so thank everybody. I appreciate you all staying the extra 21 minutes. And thank you very much for staying. We're gonna close the meeting out unless anybody has anything else to say, because it's been a long night.
Don't log off because I don't know who's recording. That's
yes.
all.
Who has got the Roosevelt's got it. So
there we go.
So we're gonna close the meeting at 8:22. Thank you very much for attending, everybody. And I will see everybody